Good morning, everyone. My name is Arezi Dolera.
And I am Charisse Duca, and we are your reporters for today's chapter.
Today, we will be discussing the chapter 7 of our ethics book, which is Moral Courage. As for the overview, this chapter focuses on courage, a rare and often misunderstood virtue. The discussion is an exploration of the different meanings and forms of courage with emphasis on moral courage. As for the objectives, at the end of the chapter, you should be able to explain moral courage with appropriate examples and describe acts of moral courage. Heroes are often associated with the word courage. They act in ways that most others around them are too timid to even try. They stand out because of their desirable and rare qualities. They do good when everyone else is overwhelmed with fear. Courage is the capacity to risk harm or danger to oneself. With this definition, there is no surprise in the apparent correlation between courage and conflict. Conflict brings many kinds of danger, and not everyone has the capacity to face them. In contrast, peaceful times and places seem to pose little or no risk. In reality, conflicts are everywhere. They only differ in form and gravity. Accordingly, courage comes in different forms. First, we have physical courage. Physical courage refers to the willingness to face danger in battle, which is typically viewed as a military trait. In ancient Greece, it was called andria, which literally means manliness, as it was thought of to be masculine virtue. The ancient Greek culture was rather sexist. Soldiers are trained and expected to have the confidence to face the possibility, even the probability of a violent, painful death. Aside from soldiers, there are others who have the capacity to face life-threatening situations. We have Paul Rusesabagina. Paul Rusesabagina was a hotel manager in Rwanda when a long-standing conflict between two ethnic groups, the Hutus and Tutsis, escalated into a full-scale government-supported genocide in 1994. Within a few months, hundreds of thousands of people were killed. A Hutu, Rusesabagina, was relatively safe, although his Tutsi wife and children were targeted by the murderous militia. He could have decided to secure his family regardless of other people, but he would not let other innocent people, even strangers, get killed. He hid 1,268 people fleeing from the carnage in a hotel to keep them safe. He bribed militias in order to protect the people he was hiding. At the end of the carnage, none of the refugees he helped was hurt or killed in the attacks. Rusesabagina had all the reasons to secure just his family and flee to relative safety, which was hard enough by itself, yet he did more in spite of the circumstances. He saved more people than most others did. With physical courage, one faces an internal threat to one's life, in some cases voluntarily. There may be some opportunity to fight back. Soldiers are not doomed. Even if they do, at least they die on active service. To the adventurous, it is worthwhile. In the case of non-combatants like Rusesabagina, the conviction that they did it was for something greater than themselves. Something perceived as evil was enough to induce the needed courage. Second, we have psychological courage. Psychological courage is thriving in the face of physical and mental illness. Take the case of John Diamond, a journalist battling with cancer. 2 months before his death in 2001, his editor asked him to write an article about the meaning of life. He wrote, among others, "It is about loving and being loved, about doing the right thing, about one day being missed when we are gone. Why am I happy? Because I'm alive." Every year, many physically fit people commit suicide, while many others with terminal illnesses stickily face the eventuality of their ultimate death. It takes courage to face life's present challenges without bitterness and stay on without false hopes for the future. With psychological courage, one is forced to face the eventuality of death by internal condition, an illness with no assurance of cure, and a suffering with no guarantee of alleviation.
Moral courage. Moral courage is the disposition to voluntarily act, perhaps fearfully, in a dangerous circumstance where the relevant risks are reasonably appraised, in an effort to obtain or preserve some perceived goods for oneself or others, recognizing that the desired perceived good may not be realized. Moral courage is a good-oriented. For men's use, the difference between petty and great courage is that the latter is grounded in and oriented towards the good. Moral courage is the willingness to act in spite of the danger or suffering for a good purpose. Willingness alone without good purpose is pointless. Totally. Good intention alone without willingness is useless. Anyone can be brave, but only those who use their bravery for some good purpose are morally courageous. Moral courage is a commitment to a moral principles, an awareness of the danger involved in supporting those principles, and a willing endurance of that danger. Rosessa Beginna's courageous act was moral because of his personal conviction that genocide was wrong and his intention to save innocent lives. Good intention made his physical courage moral. Courage is commonly thought of as standing one's ground. Above all, in front of the supreme danger, that is, death, the courageous person faces death, that is, non-being. Moral courage enables one to face the risk of losing oneself, dying for the sake of a good beyond oneself. Courage means preferring the good over being. Moral courage is voluntary. It is a function neither of the intellect nor of the emotions. Moral courage is a function of a strong will. It is a personal decision and commitment to act without being induced by some external force. The intellect may identify the good thing to do, and the emotion may provide the motivation. However, ultimately, it is free will that makes one act. Moral courage is not necessarily the absence of fear. Fear is a normal and healthy emotional reaction to some perceived danger. Moral courage is the ability to think and act in spite of and not because of fear. A morally courageous person is not suicidal. Willingness to act comes from realistic assessment of the risk involved. Excessive confidence is rashness, and it is not courage. Moral courage involves deliberate planning and careful execution of plans. Acts of courage sometimes involve benefiting others. People like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. defied social norms, faced strong opposition and grave personal danger for the sake of many other people. However, helping another person is not always required. Sometimes, personal challenges are more than enough for one to bear. Yet good intentions need not be altruistic. Moral courage involves commitment in spite of uncertainty of outcomes. Even the best calculated risk assessments, strategic planning, and tactical preparation are not guaranteed to succeed. Failure, which can mean anything from humiliation to death depending on the situation, is always a possibility. A morally courageous person, striving to attain a good purpose, takes risk with no assurance of success. A morally courageous person is willing to face ostracism, ridicule, and rejection if necessary to stand by what he or she believes is right. Moral courage does not only emerge from extraordinary circumstances like life and death situations, and exceptional individuals are not the only ones who possess such courage. Sometimes living is more difficult than dying. People often face unfair demands and try to live up to the unrealistic expectations. They need to have moral courage to cope up to the challenges in the real world. So take the young people as an example. One of the challenges they face is peer pressure. So I think most of us, if not all, could relate to this example. They want to fit in with their chosen group and to belong. However, to gain their peers' approval sometimes require more than just repackaging themselves in new fashion styles or listening to some genre of music. It may entail acquiring certain habits such as drinking alcohol or taking illegal drugs, or material things that are considered as status symbols such as expensive gadgets, the Apple, iPhone, MacBook, whatever, etc. Without firm guidance as to how to resist or withstand peer pressure, adolescents may fail to cope well. They still need to develop their decision-making skills and grow in emotional and intellectual maturity. Young people nowadays are in keen competition. Their access to social media has put them at the center of the game of one-upmanship. In their own network, in particular, they can get regular updates of the whereabouts and activities of their peers and contemporaries. They can know what their friends are having for dinner before they even get to eat it. Supposing that some of their friends are already successful in their careers, perhaps someone is already a successful entrepreneur, jet sitting across national boundaries. Seeing photos of them makes one reflect on one's self-image. Though uncertain, the young can choose from the myriad paths that can lead them to a promising career. Avoiding competition is hard, though, and it is harder for them. Many vie for the same things, especially jobs that could help them get what they want. A stable family is one's refuge from the dangers of peer pressure. It satisfies one's need for acceptance and belongingness. However, even the family has its own expectations and standards. Conformity can be costly to one's prospects in life. Take the following example. Arlene Bloom was born in the United States to an Orthodox Jewish family in 1945. After high school, she wanted to go to college, major in chemistry, and see the world. Her aspirations would challenge the time-honored traditions of her family and community. Her culture did not frown on science per se. In fact, many Jews like J. Robert Oppenheimer, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, Maury Gell-Mann, and Richard Feynman excelled in science in the 20th century. However, they are all males. In Bloom's culture, a woman is destined to be a housewife. Her family expected her to find some Jewish man with sufficient income, get married, and raise children. It was a struggle to make them allow her to go to college, especially to a major in science. Her family was concerned that she might not get married because uneducated women might intimidate prospective Jewish men. Unfortunately, at some point, her family let her pursue her scientific interest. Through persistence and determination, she became a scientist. Aside from success in some endeavor once dominated by men, in her own right, in 2007, she co-founded Green Science Policy Institute, advocating to bring scientific research results into policy decisions to protect human health and the environment from toxic chemicals. We have now reached the conclusion of this chapter. Moral courage is the right degree of confidence in one's abilities relative to the actual risks and prospective benefits. Deficiency in confidence is cowardice. Excess is recklessness. It is the capacity and willingness to face danger with realistic assessments of the risks involved. The purpose is to gain or preserve some good either for oneself or others, with the awareness that success is not guaranteed. While moral courage may manifest physically, for example, facing external threats, or for psychologically, facing illness, it is always directed to some good, but it can be acquired through studying or either through training.
찾을 것